we would like to start the new session for today. Metaverse, the new frontiers for brands, creating a tailored approach for Indian market. It will be moderated by Mr. Girish Menon himself, and I would request him to introduce his speakers, please.
Hello. Hi, everybody. Good morning, and thanks so much for being here. Uh, we've got today a very interesting topic in terms of exploring the opportunities around the metaverse for brands in particular from an Indian context, right? And the reason it's a very interesting conversation is because on one hand, nobody denies the potential of the metaverse from a longer term perspective. But over the last 12 months, it's gone through a serious hype cycle of highs and lows. And, there's obviously a lot of uncertainty around it. So I think it'll be good to maybe have a conversation with, to think through some of the elements around this, what's working, what are the opportunities. And to explore that, I've got a very interesting mix of panelists here with me. I've got Sumeer Mathur, who's creative head at Denstu, and he will help us think through from a brand perspective and how brands are looking at metaverses, and also importantly, how do we tailor something uniquely Indian, as we move along. I've also got Manish Goyal, Cloud Native Industry Director from Oracle Cloud. Hi, Manish. Again, to hopefully help us explore the tech aspects around metaverse, build out, and in particular, what are the important elements that we need to think through. And finally, I've got Rakesh, who's CEO at Metaphy. Metaphy is looking to build together a plug-and-play platform for brands with the objective of democratizing metaverses for brands as we move forward, right? Welcome, Rakesh. So, as we start, right, I think just, I'll take a couple of minutes to lay some context to this conversation, right? Um, you know, every time I'm asked to define what is the metaverse, I think my answer always turns out to be different. And part of the reason also is because one, while we are also learning, day to day, I think the concept itself is evolving, as technology evolves, as people try more and more innovative models. All those elements, they therefore contribute to a situation where, it is definitely confusing for a lot of people. Uh, the way I would look at it, and I would, try to keep the whole tech elements out of it and make it a very, very simple aspect to say, it's a set of immersive virtual 3D worlds where users can come and have a comprehensive simulated experience with their own ability to create their own unique digital identities, which can then become pretty much a life of its own for them. And all of this will then be backed by multiple experiences, by brands, and more importantly, a sustainable economy and commerce. So I think in a lot of ways, it is replicating what you do in life in the virtual world, but in some ways removing a lot of the restrictions that the physical world imposes, and gives you the opportunity to really go let your imagination run wild in a lot of ways, right? But like I mentioned at the beginning, there's a serious hype cycle that the metaverse has gone through, and it was the darling and the word of the year pretty much for a lot of people a few months back. And now it's almost becoming something that people are looking at it very, very hesitantly and suspiciously, right? But I would imagine, like all new technologies, it's going to go through a full cycle before it re-emerges as the concepts become more sustainable and materialized, right? The other important aspect also I want to bring together as context is Metaverse for India, at least in my perspective, will need to evolve very, very differently from the way metaverses are evolving or the concepts are evolving globally. And part of the answer lies in the device ecosystem and the device penetration. And given that India is fundamentally a mobile economy with very little VR, AR device penetration, uh, I think a lot of the emphasis would need to be, at least in the next few years, to build out an ecosystem of metaverses around the mobile device. And obviously, VR, AR becomes an add-on, but the focus might need to be, mobile if you want to access users at scale, right? The other aspect that also comes to mind is the payment models, with crypto in particular being a very important component globally of metaverse experiences. But in India, with one, the regulatory uncertainty, and two, the complexity itself of crypto, is just going to make greater friction for users, and therefore other payment models need to be thought through. And finally, I think one other important element to keep in mind is also the level of digital maturity. And therefore, if you want scale, you would also need to have a much, much more focused and simpler narrative and journey for the user, right? So that, I think, very, very high level, some 3 or 4 elements that come to mind in terms of what factors you need to keep in mind when you want to look at metaverses for India. And then that finally, I think, brings me to the concept, the context that we want to discuss today is that when brands therefore want to use the metaverse and want to create experiences for themselves in the metaverse to engage with users, how do they go about doing it? Where are they today? How much do they actually understand? And what is the potential that's out there which the brands can genuinely, look to leverage, right? And in that context, sorry. In that context, I think what we could, start with, with all of you is maybe just like a minute, 2 minute, background about yourself, but also importantly, then segue into what do you think is the current perceptions around the metaverse in the market today, and what do you think are the contributing factors to that, right? So, Sumeer, you can start. Then we can just.
Yeah, so I had strategy for Denstu, which is, a creative agency. Denstu.
I think you might need to go a bit closer. Sorry.
Closer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And I think, to your point, metaverse is as much a reality as it's a vision. So you're working towards a vision. So there are many aspects of the metaverse which exist right now. There are ways in which uh, brands and marketeers and consumers can engage and interact in the metaverse, but at the same time, we don't know the endpoint yet. Therefore, and that's what gives it the sense of fluidity and maybe even the confusion that what is it. So I remember before this, we were just discussing that a lot of people think metaverse is only gaming, right?
Yeah.
And we are sitting on a platform which is about gaming, but that is one of the gateways into metaverse. There are other gateways into metaverse
Absolutely.
as well. Chat is, social media is. Uh, so I think we're still fluid, but yes, gaming is one of the bigger ones. Gaming is where a lot of the target audience already exists. Gaming is where a lot of brands have actually managed globally to make a presence felt, to engage with their customers, and therefore gaming takes almost like a forefront when it comes to the metaverse right now. But that's not all there is to it fundamentally.
True. Got it.
Right. I also personally believe that with brands and all these exchanges, there needs to be a value exchange. So it's important for people to figure out what do consumers want, and then look at it from the prism of what a brand can do,
Right.
and then see how you can add into the life of the consumer. and of course add back to the life of the brand in terms of what it wants to do. So as long as you can figure out what your value exchange is with the consumer,
True.
you will find a sweet spot where you can make metaverse relevant for your brand and for your target audience. So
Got it.
that's
Got it.
pretty
Fair
much.
point. Manish,
I think metaverse has, in the current sense that what we see, it has to be evolved to the next level, wherein we will see certain things maturing, which are currently we don't see in the ecosystem. For multiple people, there are, it's about AR, it is about VR, it is about mobile. The definition itself is not clear, which perhaps is going to happen in over a period of time, and when we see the maturity coming in.
yeah.
We can't see the Roblox and the Decentralands of the world. We will have the same play in the Indian market as well. We'll have to have a different play, as you
Yeah.
rightly mentioned initially as well. It cannot be in the same context because the consumer itself is different, its requirements are different, and the way the brands are going to engage with them is also
Yeah.
going to be different. So, for example, having an interplay within the entire multiple metaverses, or how does a brand engages with the customer is going to be the quintessential part that somebody needs to look at it. At the same time, there are consumer metaverses and the industrial
Yeah.
metaverses. So that's a very big distinction between the two.
True.
And how do you play it out for the two different use cases is going to be critical and important for it. I think that's
Absolutely.
what I would say is a starting point.
Absolutely. No, fair point. Rakesh, your perspectives?
Yeah. So
You got to go a little closer. Bring it.
yeah. So one thing we feel very strongly is that this is the next natural progression of content. Right? So earlier it used to be text, then it used to be images, then it went into short form video, long form video, micro form videos, right? Next, what we hypothesize is that interactive immersion is going to be the next form of content.
Yeah.
So there is a group of content creators, they have already started evolving, who are making 3D stuff, making immersion things for brands and all those stuff, right?
You got to be a little talk close to the
Okay,
mic.
so nothing was here.
Talk close to the mic, yeah. You got to lean forward, talk close to the mic.
Yeah, so what I was just saying is that earlier it used to be text-based content, then it evolved into image-based, and then video, short form, micro videos, and all those stuff, right? So what next is going to happen is that we are seeing a shift into interactive and immersive content creation processes going to be aligned with consumers and that brand scenarios, right? So that is one thing. Then the other thing is that throughout this process of digital transformation that happened, there was always an intermediary or a wall or a conduit for a brand to reach out to their users or their fan base, right? Metaverse eliminates that brand. So now is an opportunity for the brand to directly engage with their users, build out their own cultures. So if you look at the biggest brands that are today, they are the brands who have leveraged this conduit in the most efficient way. So Metaverse increases that efficiency for brands to directly engage and form that branding recall with their users. So all in all, it's a polarizing concept like the first cam, the first iPhone, but Metaverse is also going to be the new vogue within the branding ecosystem also.
No, absolutely. At least the way I think about it, given a little bit of patience, it's almost an iPhone moment, right? In the sense when iPhone came in, it didn't change data consumption overnight, but within a year or two, there you couldn't imagine any other way to communicate or engage, right? And I think given a little bit of patience, like I said, with the power of what the technology and creativity coming together, I think this is like that moment, but it needs to be given its space so that it can evolve, over time, right? And Sumeer, I think so coming to you from the brand context, right? Because that's what we are trying to explore out here. I'm just curious to understand where we are today in India, right? Because I've had a few conversations with brands, and the conversations range from what is this, right, to the other extreme where people believe they understand it, but when you dig a little deeper, it feels a little bit like a copy paste model. Oh, this guy is there, I have to be there, or this is there, I have to do it. I want to do it quickly, I want to be first. I mean, there, at least at this point, the typical depth that you normally come across when you talk to brands in terms of how they perceive their brand, the kind of campaigns that they want to do, and all of that, when it comes to traditional and digital media, the same depth today we are not seeing yet, right? So I just wanted to understand, where do you see brands' mindset today, and how are they looking at it in India?
So, when anything new comes, I think there is a lot of hype around it. So there is an initial push or a motivation to get on the bandwagon,
Yeah.
right? So when you hear so much about metaverse, a lot of brands will be, hey, why am I not on it? Or why is my competition on it? What are they getting out of it that I can't seem to understand right
Right.
now? Having said that, uh, a lot of what you get out of metaverse in the initial stage seems to be even PR,
Yeah.
right? And that's all right. Right? I
No,
mean,
it's fine.
For some brands,
As long as that's your objective,
yes,
that's fine.
as long as that's your objective. If you were a company that wanted to be seen as the forefront in adopting new technologies and reaching out to your customers, having a PR outcome is as good as having a consumer engagement outcome on one level, right? Uh, but moving forward, I think brands need to understand how uh, they can utilize the many gateways. What is it that they wish to do on metaverse? So fundamentally, metaverse allows you to do a couple of things very well, right?
Yeah.
It allows you to plug into the creator economy. It allows you to be part of communities. It allows you to extend experiences and give experiences to consumers in a different setting, in a virtual setting. And all of those may be relevant for brands. There are examples now of brands including TV shows in the UK using metaverse to promote I'm a celebrity, get me out of here. And you also have luxury goods, and then you have experiential goods who are also using. So I think it's easier for experience-led brands, it's easier for luxury-led brands. But if you sat down and thought about it, many brands may find it relevant. What we need to do is not to assume that it's going to be a game changer yet, or it's going to monetize quickly. Like you said, right, we are in a process of evolution. But it's also as important to not ignore it.
Yeah.
To not say, I'm going to sleep and let's think about this 3 years later. Because pretty much like the iPhone example, you will have new leaders in the space, and you may have just lost out what could have been an early advantage for brands.
Got it. No, fair point. And I think so. One of the things that you had just mentioned was what couple of examples of what some of the experiential brands are doing, or some of the other guys globally are doing. Some of the luxury brands in particular. Again, just want to explore this thought a little bit more to tap into the potential of what you can do, right, with in a metaverse with your users and your and your customers. So can you give us some thoughts or examples of let's say fashion or any typical kind of category? What have you seen globally, or others thinking about or doing, which gives you a hint or a glimpse of what the potential can be?
So a lot of interesting things have been done. I think Gucci was one of the early adopters. Balenciaga was one of the early adopters. What they're allowing you to do is not just experience the brand. So especially for Gucci, when they did their gallery, they were allowing a new set of customers to experience the brand who probably has not seen the advertising and the legacy of, for example, what the brand stands for. Why can't a motorcycle brand do that in India? Why can't Royal Enfield do that?
Yeah.
Right? There is a convergence between, for example, the target audience of a motorcycle brand and gamers.
Yeah.
Right? And you could leverage that and say, hey, I want to talk about how I'm a British company with a legacy and a pedigree, and I want to bring it alive on Metaverse. So, for example, there are other brands who are more interested in giving you special events
Yeah.
right? Or experience is not about the brand itself, but say a music concert or experiences like those. So that we've seen a lot happening. I think what we've not seen much of, especially in India, right now, is because of the scale of evolution. We haven't seen many communities,
Yeah.
and that becomes a stumbling block because a lot of brands right now won't have the content out there for communities to start engaging with.
True, true.
So I think there we are slightly nascent in our country right now.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I'm sure it will grow. And in fact, influencers is another
Yeah.
angle on that, right?
Yeah,
to
yeah.
have influencers create content which brands can be part of in the metaverse. So there are many aspects which we are seeing abroad. I don't think it will be like to like, because maybe infrastructure won't be the same in India, but then that also allows you for innovation, right?
True, true.
India always throws everything into a spin, right? So it's our
Absolutely.
turn to
You
throw
need to figure your
metaverse
way
into a
out,
spin
right?
and do it our way.
True, true, true.
I think
No, fair. And
one additional point, I guess, what to what Sumeer has mentioned, I think the capability to involve physical and the digital together. So not only the experience when I go into the metaverse, but I am also able to seamlessly transact and also buy the product, for example, right? That is where the game changing is going to happen. Perhaps this
true.
is happening somewhere in US in some of the metaverses, but I think that is where if you're able to seamlessly do it, that's the transition also you will see from Web 2 to Web 3 as well.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think that's and I think there is a play which is yet to be explored in a much deeper sense.
Right.
And you integrate it with how you know do the transaction, fulfill the transaction at the same time, and meet the endpoint logistics as well.
Absolutely. No, in fact, it's a very, very relevant point, and I think at least my hypothesis is that for somebody to be happy with a virtual only value creation, the digital maturity of either that user or that ecosystem needs to be high enough for them to be able to be, okay with just that. But in a country like ours in particular, where the maturity levels are at multiple different levels of scale, right? I think it's very important to marry the real world and the virtual world.
Correct.
And to show people that this is not just hype. It's not just something that you can do in the virtual world, but you can actually see value for that in the real world, and whether that is for users or for brands, right? How do you generate that value addition even in the real world, and how do people feel connected because of that?
Absolutely.
So I think it's a very, very relevant point. Rakesh, I wanted to just link up a couple of points that Sumeer mentioned, and get your perspectives on it. I think the first point I do want to explore is about the the ability for the whole metaverse creation process to become much, much more democratized, right? And I think globally and even in India, if you see today, whoever is rushing into it or wants to try and become the first mover and to create a presence in the metaverse, generally large companies, large brands with fairly deep pockets and the ability to spend the money to test and experiment, right? But that unfortunately also means that a huge chunk of the brands who are much more maybe smaller than them, right, have this challenge of what do I do? If I want to be on the metaverse, how do I do? Do I need to spend X crores and 6 months doing that? Is there an easier way? So can we talk a little bit about what's the approach to democratize this whole metaverse creation?
Yeah, so
And you'll have to definitely come closer.
yeah, so let's go a little bit back, right?
Yeah.
When before video creation or video content creation became the norm, uh, creating a video meant that you had to have so much assets in place. You have to have a person directing the whole thing. Just video creation, even in an ad level, for a 5-minute thing or a 3-minute thing, was so hard.
Yeah.
Today, there are thousands of tools that can synthetically create a video for you at a stroke of, like, you just input 2 or 3 lines of words.
Yeah.
They give out a completely done video. The same thing has started happening with 3D content creation. That is the core for metaverse building also.
Yeah.
So democratizing the workflow concepts of creating content, bringing that content to life, and
Yeah.
creating a narrative for that content has started. So one of the things even Metaphy does is democratizing or building the tool sets for brands to very easily get into the whole content creation process for the metaverse building activities. So that is one thing we are doing. The other thing is
No, so
leveraging.
if I just hold on to that, so what does that actually mean, right? I mean, is it like a menu option kind of a thing, or is it are we still talking about getting some 5 people to come and work with you? How does it work?
So we are saying that, or we have started leveraging AI as a creative partner, right? So today, if you want to create a very HD image or even 3D particles, you just go into our AI console, just input that I want an apple that is colored red and render it. You would get an apple that is in the shape of in the color of red, and you would be able to use it within your 3D workflow, right? It is as simple as that.
Got it.
Or automatically generating the textures that you need to make it look as photorealistic as possible. So everything of that is actually now be used with generative AI.
Got it.
So all those processes are being automated now, so that the dependency on having a very intensive or a money intensive process needs to be negated. So those are the things that are happening.
Got it. So essentially, we are saying that a small, sari shop in Gurgaon hypothetically can use something like this, to create his own. If he wants to have a metaverse presence, it is possible. Hopefully, in the near future, not just the purview of the large brands, right?
It would be as simple as clicking a photo, right? You
Got it.
take a photo of a thing and it would be converted into 3D. That is the tech that we are starting to work with.
Got it. The other point which Sumeer mentioned, and I think Manish also touched upon, is this whole digital meta-human virtual influencer concept, right? Because that's again something that has a lot of lasting value for brands, right? Because there's so much you can actually do with that in multiple use cases, right? So how will that play out? While we've seen some use cases globally, we haven't really seen too much happening in India as yet.
So I would actually consider this in the opposite way. India has been the pioneer or the first factor for almost every virtual assistant that you see today.
Got
the
it.
biggest virtual influencers or virtual assistants has been made by Indian companies. And so, but we call them as virtual assistants or chatbots, right?
Yeah.
If you give them a persona and if you give them an identity, that is what a meta-human is. So we already have the AI capability. We are very near to sentience now. So nowadays, through our AI, we are able to understand who is in front of us, what is going on in the surroundings, what the person is feeling, what should we feel in counter to that.
Yeah.
All those stuff is being ingrained within the AI. So some of the use cases that are coming out of it is that AI-led brand mascots, right? So when you go with human-led mascots or human representations of a brand, there is always a possibility that the actions of that human can influence the brand in a negative way.
Yeah.
But with AI-controlled or AI-simulated brand mascots, you have more control with what you do. The other thing is, our AI or the capabilities are so configurable that at scale, it can be a HR person, it can be a sales assistant, it can be a concierge at your mall, whatever you want to be. It can be a hologram that kind of sells you your products, market your products, and all those it does, right?
Got it.
So that is another thing where this
Got it.
excels.
So one question I want to understand, and maybe it'll be good, Manish in particular, if you can also add on, is so whatever I've seen and read about virtual humans and generative AI, the IQ part of it, there's a clear model and a path as to how you will solve, right? Fundamentally, it's data.
Correct.
How do you solve for EQ, right? How do you, because particularly for a brand, right? Because you don't want a robot out there talking, right? You want that virtual human to represent your brand, and that the emotional element is there is very, very important if you want that that brand that virtual human to respond. So how would you solve for that?
Yeah, so a very good example of that is the current GPT-3 models also, right?
Yeah.
So there are neural networks very clearly or very determined about introducing the EQ part of things. For example, understanding fear, joy, hunger, happiness, sadness, all this from natural language programming itself to understand, depending on how the user in front of him talks, right? To get what the vibe of the person is, what is he feeling. This is the same way that when you talk to somebody over phone, using his tone of voice, using the words that he uses, just know, right? How
Yeah.
is the guy feeling? It's the same thing that flows into the AI concepts now as
Interesting.
well. And with the amount of data that has been going into this, right? Every day, the lines between whether we are talking to a virtual assistant or a human is getting blurred now. So it's
True.
very hard now. So that is a curious case, right? People have proposed to AI chatbots thinking that it is actually a
Right.
partner in front of them. So that is the levels we are at, and it's
Fair.
pretty interesting.
Fair enough. Manish, just your perspectives on some of this.
I think human element is always the critical component, right?
Yeah.
And unless and until you will not be able to bring in that touch, will always be a missing component, right?
Fair.
So as long as you're able to train on the, I would say, a very textual component, then it makes sense. But when there is a human element that comes in, if it is not there, then definitely you need to be very cautious in terms of how you're positioning a bot or how you're positioning a,
Yeah.
with the interaction with the
Agreed.
customer. Unless and until that is not done, then it will always be a transactional behavior with the
Yeah.
customer. It will not go wherein you are able to develop a deeper relationship out there.
True. True.
And unless and until that is not done, then I don't think so. It will always remain at a transaction level or
No,
a
and I
layer
think
itself.
it's a fair point, right? Because a transactional level use case is effectively only giving a face to a chatbot, right?
Correct.
And that's not that's not exciting enough.
So if I
in
go
terms
to
of
a
the
Union
potential.
Bank metaverse and I ask the questions and I get an answer, that is just solving one part of the problem, wherein I'm
Exactly.
getting an answer to some questions, maybe through a human bot or something like that, right? But there is again somebody not there to develop relationship with me. That can only happen when there is
Fair.
a normal human, right?
Agreed.
So I
Agreed.
think that's a
Agreed.
miss we'll always see between the digital and the physical. We will try to kind of narrow down the gap,
Yeah.
but over a period of time, and that's where the
But
component of
with the
bringing
way
in
some of the
physical and
AI
digital.
tech seems to be evolving,
It could be.
But Sumeer, your
No,
perspective very important on this.
I just wanted to be the dystopian flag bearer here and say that maybe they can get emotions better than humans because they won't lose it, right? It's just
Yeah.
programmed. So maybe it's easier for them to always hit the right note that a brand wants to or a customer
Yeah.
experience.
True.
Unlike in the real world where you don't know what the variables are. Of course, we are not there yet.
Yeah.
But in the future.
But on that point, do you see value for brands to think through this kind of a model?
I do think so. I think brands need to spend some time with the technology, understand the possibilities
Yeah.
of the technology, figure out for themselves what their play could be.
True.
And then, basis all that understanding, step forward and maybe do a few initiatives in the metaverse world. But not try and do everything all at once.
Yeah.
Not try and think this will be the game changer or the one thing that will change their fortunes right now. But there is certainly an early mover advantage that is open, right, for most brands right now.
So baby steps and experimentation.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And the more you know, it's kind of like the iPhone thing that you
Yeah.
said, right? I mean, I think 2 years later, the word of the year at Time Magazine cover was apps, right? And there was nothing even remotely near an app.
True.
3 years before the iPhone was launched. So
True.
that's how quickly things evolved, right?
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. No, fair. Manish, coming over to you, just want to explore the tech aspect of this too, in terms of try and understand today what are some of the infrastructure and technology challenges that exist, which is sort of holding back us reaching the potential of what we can with the metaverse.
Very interesting question, Girish. I think technology at this point in time is a bedrock of what you are developing, right?
True.
So there are two elements which are primarily I want to highlight. One is the cost, which is
Yeah.
considering the fact that metaverse requires a high compute and GPU kind of a infrastructure, and it is costly as well. So how do you ensure that your entire tech stack that you're using is essentially cost effective? Because
Yeah.
we are talking about reaching it to the masses, and we are talking about ensuring that we are creating a larger brand play. So one part is where how do I ensure that I use the right infrastructure, which essentially lowers the technology cost for me, right? The second is how do I integrate multiple elements in it? So when we're talking about physical to digital, when we're talking about payment processes, when we're talking about whether it is UPI or a crypto or a debit card or a credit, right? So there are multiple layers which are attached to it. We are not talking about just somebody coming into a metaverse and is able to visualize it.
Yeah.
But then how do you make it more relevant for the brands wherein they can stream a revenue as well as for the customer as well. The third part, I think, is one of the critical elements that I have seen, and perhaps Rakesh can add in here, is that when we are talking about democratizing the entire metaverse, we should have the ability to create the 2D to 3D models, right, seamlessly. Now, currently, what I know is it is that technology is not yet available. So unless and until that part is not fixed in, I don't I don't think so. It is going to be really a higher uptake as well.
Got it.
Because otherwise, the other component is that you lower the cost of developing the 3D assets itself.
True.
But if you have to utilize the existing assets,
So
then
instead
you
of
have to have
creating from scratch, you're saying repurpose what's there in 2D.
Correct.
And how quickly can that be done?
How quickly that can be.
No, fair
I
point.
think that forms the basic, still the premise. And if I'm able to solve these, then I'm able to solve multiple other elements of engaging and other components around.
No, fair point. The other thing that I also wanted to, just explore a little bit, understand from you is, so while, at least my sense is about, mobile being an access point for India and, but that being said, for a truly immersive experience, you still need, VR, AR, mixed reality, those, models. Where do you see the global situation today in terms of, that technology evolving? And more importantly, how do you see that playing out in India from over the next few years?
Very clearly, I think mobile is going to be the access device here in India, right?
Yeah.
Currently, the phones are getting to a stage, and as the change cycle will happen, customers are going to buy a higher powered phones itself. So within the next 5 to 10 years, you can see that as we will have the maturity of a metaverse, which will become much more lighter from a tech point of view. Currently, it is very heavy. If you start to try to open it on a low-end smartphone, for example, it will not give you the same user experience.
True.
So unless and until that was going to happen, that the larger play is not going to come in.
Got it.
We can only see it when the change cycle will happen, when the cost of your lower-end smartphone becomes, of course, the power of the lower-end smartphone becomes higher, and you are able to access it.
Yeah.
AR, VR in the current format, I don't think so is in its stage where a mass adoption can happen in.
True.
Right? Unless and until the technology changes completely, the ease of use comes into play, and the customer is able to utilize it, very without any glitches. Then it makes a lot of sense. Otherwise, it will perhaps be a mobile device-driven. Access.
So basically, saying not to buy Facebook stock. No.
I just wanted to add to what he said, and specifically from an India perspective, I think there is one more stakeholder who's not on the panel here, which is the government, right? So we do need better regulation, we need better policy, we need encouragement, we need tax incentives.
True.
Those are all the things that happened for other sectors, right? And then they will probably be required here. And there are real concerns of safety, for instance, right? Of identity, for instance.
Privacy,
all of that is
safety,
required,
yes.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Completely agree. I think one other point I want to explore, and Sumeer and Rakesh, you can help me with this. Is Sumeer in particular, if you see today, like you mentioned, right, a lot of the brand presence on the metaverse is about first mover, PR, building a brand, kind of a outlet for consumers to experience. How far are we or close are we to meta commerce, right? not meta commerce today in the sense of, say, what a Nike does with digital assets, right? But I'm talking physical products and services which the companies have in the real world, right? Which today is on the online side is solved through e-commerce, right? But in a metaverse construct, bringing the whole meta commerce play, what do you think of that option or an opportunity, and where are we today? Would love to hear thoughts on that.
I would say that we are slightly under leveraged there because
Right.
a lot of this, because it already exists, there is e-commerce happening.
Yeah.
You know, the logistically, it is possible to satisfy that transaction. I don't see a lot of brands right now
Yeah.
being present. One of the other things that this helps is, brands are always struggling in a cluttered market space.
Right.
And here you're giving them an opportunity to be discovered
True.
on their own terms in a way, right?
True.
In a completely unique environment, which their competition may not have tapped into yet. So I would say it's slightly under leveraged right now.
Right. Fair. Rakesh,
So one place, or
you have to move closer, buddy.
so bad at this. So in one place we have seen very good application of immersive tech go in is Lenskart. You would see, right? They are selling eyewear in an AR augmented
Yeah.
locality. So given by their own statistics, after the introduction of immersive tech like AR, their sales has jumped almost 30 to 40%. So what this indicates is that a well-executed immersive experience can be a first stepping stone into creating a connected metaverse experience.
Very good point. Yeah.
That is one thing. And the other thing is, metaverse as an experience gives brands a lot more independence and sovereignty. Because Lenskart had its own platform, had its own conduit directly to their users, they could implement tech this fast and they could leverage the upsides of it.
True.
So Metaverse opens up that channel for all those brands to be more independent, be more in touch with their users, execute ideas fast if they set their minds to it. So
Got
that
it.
is one thing that is very strongly coming out.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I think I think we are pretty much almost out of time. What I would just maybe like to hear is closing remarks. A little bit of crystal gazing. Let's say, let's not go too far out. Let's say 3 years. How do you see the whole evolution of the metaverse in India? And Manish, maybe you can start off.
As I was discussing, I have been cautiously optimistic.
Yeah.
I think the technology has to really evolve. We cannot do a cut and paste of what we have seen in here. The maturity will come in only, as the new disruptors will come into play and how they see and the entire thing will coming together. I think the business models with respect to how we are ensuring the physical and the digital, how the brands are able to make money, and how we are able to lower the overall cost will really determine the overall customer experience.
Got
And
it.
if that is why I think can taken care of, and I am optimistic that that will happen in next 2 to 3 years. It's not the real winter of metaverse. It is going to happen.
Absolutely.
Then I think we'll see a real adoption and a mass level, which is equally good and convenient for the brands as well as for the customers.
Exactly. No, great points, Sumeer.
So what we know, this survey in the US which said that 70% of people expect metaverse to substitute for social media, or
Interesting.
people already on metaverse spend at least an hour there. I like to believe that things move faster than we can anticipate.
Right.
And therefore, while we should be cautious, but we should be more optimistic. So yes, things will change, and then they will change very rapidly.
Fair point. No, I think it's a very relevant point you made about the pace of change, right? I mean, even if you look at generative AI with ChatGPT, it's not that people have not been talking about the GPT tech for some time. It's been around for the last couple of years, but the minute it breached a barrier, the pace of adoption has been monumental, right? So I think that's a very interesting point you made, that go slow, and then just take off, right? No, fair. Rakesh?
Even with conservative projections, right, in the next 3 years or 4, every company is going to have some kind of an immersive experience or a metaverse division, and every website is going to have at least a very small immersive experience for their own user bases to engage and understand their brands better.
Right.
And this virtual influencers or this virtual personified digital characters for their brands are going to be as important as the chatbot in a website. So
Right.
it's going to get embedded in all the websites that you see today. So that is where I see, and you will also see a lot of proliferation of, like you have how you have mobile phones. One day you would have AR glasses or VR glasses, and the prices are going to drop so low. There is
Right.
a heavy push from hardware industry to make that happen, because they think that that is the next set of device based experience that is going to go throughout in the world. So massive push on the hardware phase also you will see.
Fair. No, absolutely, yeah. And thanks so much to all of you guys for your thoughts. I will, if I can just add my 2 bits to this, I think while all of you are pretty much aligned in terms of how you're thinking, I would go with what Sumeer said, that I think once we get some kind of a momentum going, I think the pickup is going to be very, very quick. And I truly have confidence in the Indian startup ecosystem to figure a way to make this viable for India, right? I think over the last 10 years in digital, people have realized that you need to think of things differently. So now I think for technologies like this, from day one, that thinking is already starting to happen in terms of what do you need to do to make this work for India. So I'm more than cautious. I'm probably supremely optimistic on this. So let's see, fingers crossed, how this plays out.
Yeah.
Maybe
so
what we could
I'll just
sorry,
add one
please.
thing, right? Like with most things that happen in India, we are just one wild success story away from a mass adoption.
Yeah.
ChatGPT did the same to the US economy in terms of AI integrations and stuff, right? It almost decimated complete markets. It pulled up markets. The same thing is going to happen with India. We just want that one use case or that one success story that can give other brands also enough incentive to jump onto the whole thing. So
Absolutely.
let's wait for it.
No, completely in agreement. So I think before we close, maybe a couple of questions if there's anybody in the audience. Please, sir. No, there's a, we can't hear ourselves, sir.
Hello. Okay. Just two things. Why are we so much interested in brands using Metaverse? Metaverse has its own identity as well, right? Brands use social media. Social media exists on its own as well. I can understand Sumeer speaking because he comes from that background, but people who are not from purely marketing background, means, is there a specific reason for that? That's one. The other thing that comes to my mind is, why do we want the entire nation to be on Metaverse? India is a large nation from a population perspective. Just the high income group or the high medium income group population would be probably the same amount as the entire Europe. So, any specific reasons?
Fair. Let me give it a shot, and then please feel free to add on, right? I think right at the beginning, I had mentioned that the metaverse as a concept and as a topic is very, very vast, right? And there's not much, and you can't really put that in a 45-minute conversation. So that's the reason why this topic is very specifically focused on the brand side of it, right? That's the reason you've heard all the conversations about brand. We can easily have a 2-hour session on consumer metaverse, industrial metaverse. So there's a lot of use cases out there which we can spend time. But like you said, this particular topic was focused on brands. The second point I would also make to the question you raised. This is nothing to do with income levels at all. Okay, the way to look at the metaverse is it is an evolution of the way people will consume a thing, right? And that's the reason why we are saying that in India, the consumption on metaverse will happen through the mobile phone. So we are not saying somebody needs to spend 50,000 rupees to buy a VR headset. We are saying your existing phone will have the capability to deliver those experiences to you, so that the entire country can, see the, experience the opportunities. That's one point. The second point, and this is what we had mentioned a little bit in the, this is an evolution of the way consumption happens. So it's like radio giving way to TV, TV giving way to, your streaming, or, land phones giving way to wireless, to iPhones, or, your mobile phones for consumption. The same way, this is the next generation of, the way consumption is going to happen. Therefore, everyone is going to be reaping the benefits. What we have to ensure is that the models that evolve over the next few years is done in such a way that everybody gets the benefit and not just a select few. That is an important consideration for sure. Right? Sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to add. So let's take brands out of the equation. One of the things that the metaverse does very well is learning and education. Because it takes away geography as a boundary, right? And a country like India can definitely take advantage of that. There is also, metaverse helps you stay entertained, and this isn't just about being bored, but it's about engaging, right? Whether it is in your interests, whether it is meeting like-minded people. So that's another way in which it can give a new sense of belonging and a new sense of community. Which could be at a city level, which could be at a state level, which could be at a national level. And a lot of people believe that it allows them to do what they can't in their real day-to-day life. So yes, there is an element of escapism in that, but there is also an element of enablement and being empowered to do something. So even if brands don't monetize, there is a lot that can be done on metaverse.
One additional point, I think you mentioned about why India has to be there on Metaverse. So let us look at from a perspective that if I have all my tourism places on Metaverse, how easier it becomes a person traveling from anywhere around the world to go and have an immersive experience before even putting their foot in the country, right? Or even somebody sitting in Rajasthan can go to Puducherry and have a look at around what are the beaches and what are the temples around it. So it's not about we are pushing for people to be on the metaverse, but there are relevant use cases on which it has its importance, and it can actually catapult the entire digital economy that we are building.
And yeah, so I too would like to answer on the point about India, right? Why metaverse in India and stuff. Because it is such an early tech, and it's also a very important early tech, this also opens up a lot of innovation opportunities within India. So the next set of content creators that you see, the next set of AI makers that you see, the next set of 3D pipelines that is going to be built, that is going to be used in multiple industries, not just in metaverse, right? In industrial use cases, in government use cases, in defense simulations, all these things. The base of that is going to be made in India, right? So that is a great value add in terms of the tech expertise that we will bring into India and evolve from India. And also because of the geographical and cultural diversity of India, right? This metaverse becomes a landing page for Indian people to connect and be even from multiple places, right? To be in the same page and to interact with each other in a much more immersive way. So I think pretty good positives are there, and we should approach this in a very cool way.
I understood that. My point was that why are we interested that entire country will be on that in one go? Means why?
No, that is
The point is Zomato makes more money from Dubai than from the entire country in India, right? We just showcase this entire number just to showcase.
Yeah.
Does not make any
No,
sense.
I think I would reference my point earlier on television. It's a technology change, right? It's not about any company or anything. It's a technology change, right? So that's how it will play out. Sorry, any.
So, every technology always gets you the dystopian vision and the utopian vision, and reality is in the middle of that, right?
Yeah.
So,
Fair point. Yeah. Sorry, any other questions? There's somebody here.
Hello. Yeah. Hi, I'm Shakib from Gaming on Phone, and Rakesh, like you talked about pushing on AR glasses and how the prices would be going down once the mass adoption takes place, and all the hardware things would be accessible to across India. So, what do you think? Purely speaking, we cover digital gaming and all those stuffs at Gaming on Phone, and I do agree with your point. Some way or the other. But what is your view on what do you think this will impact the gaming industry? Like how we play games now, right now, and how it will be, let's say, 5 year, 10 year down the line. What is your view? How it will impact?
So a lot of tech, so a lot of tech that goes into creating metaverses are basically high-end gaming tech. So one thing that, especially in India, we see is a lot of things that we do are in the casual gaming space or in uh, a mid-end gaming space, right? So one thing what would happen is it will help us give us that AAA or AA kind of a quality. It would help us actually go to that level, skipping a step instead of having that, right? So already Niantic with their AR, Pokemon Go and all those of they have built a wonderful infrastructure. Similarly, when VR glasses or XR glasses became more vogue, right? We would have systems built within India where we become the benchmark for what the global audience will follow us around. So that is why we have been pushing for this quite harder, because this is a chance for us to set the benchmarks for world to follow. So that is where we are headed to. And also in terms of hardware tech, right? We don't have a lot of hardware native companies in India in terms of AR, VR production units, XR production units, right? So that is one place we are investing quite heavily, so that we also become a global player, not just from a consumer angle, from also a production angle also. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thank you.
Great. I think we are pretty much out of time today. Thanks so much, guys, for attending this, and hopefully this has been an interesting set of conversations there. Right? Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks to
Thank
all
you,
of you guys.
panelists, and thank you, speaker. The feedback from this panel was well received with regards to the government, and I'm sure the Indian Digital Gaming Society will be taking that up very seriously.